Caleb Fisher knew grief as a constant companion. Gabriella Cross knew solitude as a cruel jailer. Their worlds were never meant to meet, one bound by loss, the other caged by wealth and silence. Yet in the quiet of a bakery lit by trembling candles, destiny placed a child's voice between them. "Can we join you?" Molly asked. That single question didn't just break Gabriella's loneliness. It cracked open Caleb's guarded heart, setting all three on a path toward a family none dared to dream of. Gabriella Cross had learned to measure life in the spaces between her father's phone calls. 22 years old, paralyzed from the waist down since a car accident. 4 years ago, she inhabited a world of luxury that felt more like a gilded cage. Her father, Nathaniel Pierce, was the CEO of Pierce Technologies, a man who commanded boardrooms and influenced markets but couldn't find 5 minutes for his only daughter. The accident had changed everything. Not just her body, which would never again respond to her desperate wishes to stand and run, but her relationship with the only family she had left. Nathaniel had retreated into his work with the fervor of a man running from his own helplessness. He provided everything money could buy: round-the-clock nurses, a mansion with every possible accommodation, the finest doctors who all said the same thing: she would never walk again. What he couldn't provide was himself. Gabriella Tim had grown accustomed to birthdays marked by bank transfers and brief text messages to holidays, celebrated with staff who were paid to care, to a life where her wheelchair wasn't just a physical reality, but a symbol of the distance between her and the rest of the world. Caleb Fisher carried his grief differently. A 30-year-old widower who worked with his hands as a carpenter. He had raised his daughter, Molly Mitchell, alone for 5 years since his wife, Eliza Carter, died during childbirth, where Nathaniel Pierce fled from pain. Caleb had learned to live alongside it, teaching his daughter that sadness and joy could exist in the same heart. His workshop smelled of sawdust and possibilities. Each piece of furniture he crafted a meditation on permanence in a world where nothing truly lasted. Molly had inherited her mother's sparkling eyes and her father's gentle heart, a combination that made her peculiarly sensitive to the loneliness in others. Perhaps it was because she had grown up with the ghost of a mother she never knew. Learning early that love could transcend presence, that families could be both broken and whole simultaneously. Caleb had taught her to notice the quiet ones, the people sitting alone in corners, the ones whose smiles didn't reach their eyes. Everyone needs a friend. Molly. He would tell her, sometimes we need to be brave enough to offer friendship first. When poor Molly saw Gabriella, sitting alone with her birthday cake, something in the child's heart recognized a kindred spirit in isolation. She had seen that same look in her father's eyes on the hardest days. When he thought she wasn't watching, the little girl's intuition, unmarred by adult hesitation, told her this beautiful lady in the wheelchair needed exactly what they could offer. Not pity, not charity, but simple human connection. Caleb, following his daughter's lead as he often did in matters of the heart, saw in Gabriella Samu's posture the weight of sustained loneliness. He recognized the careful way she held herself, as if taking up less space might make her absence less noticeable. His carpenter's eye, trained to see potential in rough wood, saw past the expensive clothes and the wheelchair to the person underneath, who was drowning in solitude. The decision to approach her wasn't calculated or questioned. It was as natural as breathing, as necessary as his next heartbeat. "Excuse me." Caleb said after. Gabriella had looked up at them with surprise. His voice was warm, careful not to startle. "We were wondering if we could join you. My daughter would like to wish you a happy birthday." Gabriella's eyes widened, shifting between the man with kind eyes and the little girl practically vibrating with excitement. When was the last time someone had asked to join her rather than being paid to be there? Molly didn't wait for an answer, bouncing forward with a small cupcake she had been saving, decorated with a star-shaped candle. "I'm Aunt Molly. This is for you. I made it with Daddy this morning. We come here every year on this day because it's my mommy's birthday too. She's in heaven, but Daddy says she can still see us celebrating." The innocence of the child's offering, the matter-of-fact way she spoke of death and celebration in the same breath, pierced through Gabriella Combs' carefully constructed walls. Caleb pulled out a chair, moving with the unhurried grace of someone who had learned that the most important moments in life couldn't be rushed. "I'm told, Caleb. That's a beautiful cake. No one should celebrate alone." Gabriella found herself nodding, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. When Molly started singing Happy Birthday in her sweet, slightly off-key voice. Gabriella closed her eyes and made a wish for the first time in 4 years. The wish was simple, so simple it almost hurt. She wished not to be alone anymore. Caleb's baritone joined his daughter's soprano, creating a harmony that filled the small bakery with more warmth than charm Gabriella had felt in years. Over the following weeks, what began as a chance encounter evolved into something deeper and more profound. Caleb and Gabriella met regularly at the park where Molly fed ducks and chattered endlessly about her drawings, her favorite books, and the mother she imagined through her father's stories. Gabriella discovered that Caleb's presence didn't demand anything from her. He didn't look at her wheelchair with pity or discomfort. He simply saw it as part of her, like the way her hair caught the light, or how she bit her lower lip when concentrating on a book. Their conversations meandered through safe territories at first: literature, Molly's antics, the weather, before venturing into deeper waters. Caleb spoke of Eliza Carter, not with the raw anguish of fresh grief, but with the worn smoothness of a stone that had been turned over in his pocket thousands of times. He told Gabriella how Eliza had been a kindergarten teacher who believed every child was a universe of possibility, how she had painted their tiny apartment with murals of fantastical forests where anything could happen, how she had faced her pregnancy complications with a courage that still took his breath away. Gabriella found herself sharing things she hadn't told anyone, not even the expensive therapists her father, Nathaniel Pierce, had hired. She described the moment of the accident with clinical detachment at first. The drunk driver who had run the red light, the sensation of flying through the air, the strange peace before the pain. Then gradually she revealed the deeper wounds waking up to her father. Nathaniel Moisson, CEO mask firmly in place as he discussed her care with doctors as if negotiating a business deal. The slow realization that she had become a problem to be managed rather than a daughter to be loved. The endless days in the mansion where every need was anticipated except the need to be seen as more than her disability. Molita would often interrupt these heavy conversations with the perfect timing children possess, dragging Gabriella into her imaginative games where wheelchairs could fly, and sadness was just another color to paint with. The little girl had decided that Gabriella was essential to her world, frequently asking, "Are you happy today, Miss Jean Gabriella?" with the serious concern of a tiny therapist. One afternoon at their usual coffee shop, while Molly was absorbed in coloring at a nearby table, Caleb watched Gabriella laugh at something the child had said, and he felt something shift in his chest. It wasn't the dramatic lightning strike of new love, but rather the gentle recognition of possibility, like the first green shoot pushing through winter soil. Gabriella must have sensed his gaze because she turned to him, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. The coffee shop faded away, and there was only this. Two people who had been broken in different ways, discovering they might fit together not despite their damage but because of it. Caleb reached across the table, his fingers barely brushing hers. "Gabriella, I need you to know something. Molly and I were not here because we feel sorry for you. We're here because you make our days better. You make us better." Gabriella's eyes filled with tears. She didn't try to hide. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I," Caleb admitted. "But maybe we can figure it out together." Their relationship grew slowly, carefully, like a garden tended by people who understood that the most beautiful things required patience. They discovered joy in small moments. Molly. Teaching. Gabriella. To fold origami cranes. Ciao. Caleb. Adjusting restaurant chairs without being asked, so. Gabriella. His wheelchair fit perfectly. Gabriella. Reading stories to what Molly, with different voices for each character, while Caleb watched with soft eyes. The universe of their small healing family might have continued to expand gently, but Nathaniel Pierce had been watching from the shadows of his corporate tower. He had hired private investigators the moment his household staff reported that Gabriella was spending time with inappropriate company. The reports on his desk painted a picture that filled him with cold fury. Caleb Fisher, a working-class widower with modest means, spending hours with his damaged daughter. To Nathaniel, the conclusion was obvious. This man was a predator targeting a vulnerable heiress he summoned. Gabriella, to his study one evening, a room she rarely entered with its wall of monitors displaying stock tickers and its smell of expensive leather and disappointment. "You will cease all contact with this man immediately." Nathaniel commanded, not looking up from his laptop. "He's using you." Gabriella. What else could he possibly want from someone like you? The cruelty of the words, the casual dismissal of her worth beyond her bank account, hit Gabriella like a physical blow. "Someone like me?" She repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "You mean your broken daughter, the one you can't stand to look at because she reminds you that you're not actually God?" Nathaniel finally looked up, his face a mask of controlled anger that Gabriella remembered from hostile takeover meetings she'd witnessed as a child. "I'm protecting you. You're naive. Gabriella, you've been sheltered. You don't understand how the world works." Gabriella laughed, a bitter sound that seemed to surprise them both. "Sheltered. I've been imprisoned. There's a difference." Father Chum, Caleb, and Chas Molly see me. They actually see me. When did you last look at me without seeing a liability? Nathaniel stood, his full height meant to intimidate. A tactic that worked in boardrooms but only made Queen Gabriella Show feel smaller in her chair. Enough. If you continue seeing him, I'll take legal action. I'll claim he's taking advantage of a disabled person. I'll destroy his little carpentry business. Is that what you want? Gabriella felt the trap closing around her. She knew her father's threats weren't empty. He had destroyed competitors with less motivation. The thought of Caleb, an innocent Molly, being crushed by her father's machinery was unbearable. That night she sent Ani Caleb a text with shaking hands. I can't see you anymore. Please don't contact me, I'm sorry. The words felt like swallowing glass. Each letter a betrayal of everything real she'd found. Caleb stared at the message, reading it over and over as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. The text seemed so unlike Gabriella, so cold and final. Huh? Molly found him sitting in the dark living room hours later, still holding his phone. Daddy, why are you sad? She asked, climbing into his lap, with the instinctive understanding that her father needed comfort. Mr. Gabriella, can't see us anymore, sweetheart, he said, his voice rough with unshed tears. Molly was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the deep thought children give to incomprehensible adult decisions. But she loves us, Molly said simply. I know she does. She smiles different when she sees us. Real smiles, not pretend ones. Caleb hugged his daughter tighter, amazed at her perception, and heartbroken that she was learning so young that love wasn't always enough. For 3 days he respected Gabriella's wishes, though it felt like holding his breath underwater. His workshop felt oppressive, each piece of wood reminding him of stories he'd planned to share with Gabriella. Molly stopped singing around the house. Her usual cheerfulness dimmed like a light with a dying battery. On the 4th day, when Molly asked if Gabriella didn't want them because they weren't rich, something in Caleb snapped. Not in anger, but in determination. He wouldn't let Molly believe that love was conditional on bank accounts. They drove to the Pierce mansion, a journey into a different world where gates were meant to keep people out rather than welcome them in. The security guard was polite but firm. I'm sorry, sir. You're not on the approved list. Behind him, the mansion loomed like a beautiful prison. Molly pressed her small face between the iron bars of the gate. Miss Gabriella, she called out. Miss Gabriella, we miss you. Please come back. Her voice carried on the wind, a child's pure longing that no amount of money could buy or sell. Inside the mansion, Gabriella heard that precious voice calling her name. She was in her room, having refused to leave it since her father, Nathaniel's ultimatum. The sound of Molly calling for her was unbearable, each word a reminder of what she'd given up to protect them. She wheeled herself to the window and saw them at the gate. Caleb, standing with his hand on Molly's shoulder, both of them looking lost. Something inside Gabriella snapped. Not broke, but snapped back into place like a dislocated joint finally returning home. She thought of all the years she'd been obedient, all the times she'd chosen her father's comfort over her own happiness, and she realized that protecting Toronto, Caleb, and Molly from her father meant nothing if it destroyed them all. Gabriella maneuvered her wheelchair to the service elevator, the one the staff used, avoiding the main floors where her father might be. She made it to the kitchen's back door, where Nora Fields, the cook who had known her since childhood, took one look at her face and simply opened the door without a word. "Be happy, Mija." Nora whispered understanding without explanation. The evening air was cold and rain had started to fall. But Gabriella didn't care. She knew where she needed to go, drawn by the same instinct that had first brought them together. By the time she reached Sweet Memories Bakery, she was soaked through her wheelchair harder to push on the wet sidewalk, her arms aching from the effort, but she persisted. She pulled open the door with trembling hands, the bell chiming her arrival like an answered prayer. The bakery was nearly empty, but there, sitting at the same table where they'd first met, were Caleb and Molly, looking as lost as she felt. They had gone there after being turned away from the mansion, drawn by the same magnetic pull of memory and hope. "Gabriella," Molly cried out, jumping from her chair and running to her, wrapping her small arms around Gabriella's wet form without hesitation. "You came back. I knew you would. I told Daddy you loved us." Caleb stood slowly, his eyes taking in her soaked state, the determination and desperation written across her face. Without a word, he removed his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, his hands lingering for just a moment, feeling her trembling beneath his touch. "You're freezing," he said softly. "What are you doing here, Gabriella?" She looked up at him, rain and tears indistinguishable on her face. "I'm choosing," she said simply. "For the first time in 4 years, I'm choosing. I choose you. I choose Molly. I choose us. My father can threaten all he wants, but I won't live in that prison anymore. I won't." Caleb knelt beside her wheelchair, bringing himself to her eye level, his own eyes wet with emotion. "Gabriella, are you sure your father could make things very difficult? He could hurt us financially, legally." Gabriella reached out, cupping his face with one cold hand, feeling the roughness of his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "Let him try. I've already lost the use of my legs. I won't lose my heart, too. You and Quamfsis Molly are my heart now." The door burst open with a violence that made them all jump. Nathaniel Pierce stood there, rain-soaked and furious, having tracked Gabriella through the GPS on her phone. His expensive suit was ruined, his carefully styled hair plastered to his head, but his anger blazed undiminished. "Gabriella, enough of this nonsense. You're coming home now." His voice boomed through the small bakery, authority and anger radiating from every word. But before Gabriella could respond, Molly stepped forward all 6 years and 40-pound sons of her own and stood between Nathaniel and Gabriella. "You're mean," she said, clearly, her small voice carrying the weight of truth. "You're her daddy, but you're mean. My daddy says family means being there, not just paying for things. You make miscapital." Gabriella cry. "That's not what daddies are supposed to do." Nathaniel looked down at this tiny warrior child, and something in her fearless accusation pierced his armor. "You don't understand, little girl. I'm protecting my daughter." Molly shook her head solemnly. No, you're not. You're protecting yourself from feeling sad. My daddy feels sad about Mommy, but he doesn't run away. He stays. The truth from a child's mouth hung in the air like an indictment. Nathaniel Ahuk's gaze moved from hot Molly to hot Gabriella, and for the first time in 4 years, he truly looked at his daughter. She was soaking wet in a modest bakery defended by a carpenter and a child, and she looked more alive than she had since the accident. The fire in her eyes, the determination in her posture, the protective way. Caleb stood beside her. This was his daughter, not the broken shell he'd been managing. Gabriella, he began, his voice cracking. Dad. Gabriella interrupted. When I woke up in that hospital, paralyzed and terrified, do you know what I needed? Not the best doctors or the fanciest equipment. I needed my father. I needed you to hold my hand and tell me we'd figure it out together. Instead, you disappeared into your office and threw money at the problem. Well, I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm your daughter, and I'm in love with this man who sees me as whole even though I'm broken. Nathaniel's shoulders sagged, the fight leaving him as suddenly as it had arrived. He walked slowly to a chair and sat down heavily, looking every one of his 60 years. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows like an accusation. I didn't know what to do, he admitted quietly, his voice barely audible. When your mother died, I could work harder, make more money, build a bigger company in her memory. But when you got hurt, all my money couldn't fix it. I felt so useless. I am useless. Caleb spoke for the first time since Nathaniel's arrival. You're not useless. You're afraid. I understand that. When Chapter Liza Carter died, I wanted to follow her. But Aunt Molly needed me, so I learned to be afraid and present at the same time. Your daughter needs you. Mr. Pierce, not your money or your protection, just you. Nathaniel looked at this working man who had somehow understood what he, with all his education and success, had missed. I've lost 4 years. Nathaniel, said, his voice broken. How do I come back from that? Gabriella wheeled herself over to her father, reaching for his hand. One day at a time, Dad, just like I learned to live with this chair. One day at a time together. Nathaniel gripped her hand like a drowning man finding shore. I'm sorry. Gabriella, I'm so sorry. I turned you into a project because I couldn't bear to see you in pain. But I see now that I caused you more pain than that accident ever did. Molly, with the perfect timing of a child who sensed the storm had passed, piped up. Does this mean we can all be a family now because I really want Miss Aunt Gabriella to be my mommy? The innocent question broke the remaining tension, drawing watery laughs from all the adults. Nathaniel looked at his daughter, then at Caleb, then at the little girl who had shown more courage than most adults ever would. If you'll have me, he said quietly, I'd like to try. I'd like to learn how to be a father again. A grandfather, maybe. Gabriella squeezed his hand, tears flowing freely now. We'd like that, Dad. We'd all like that very much. 1 year later, Sweet Memories Bakery was transformed with white ribbons and fresh flowers for an afternoon that would blend celebration with remembrance. It was Gabriella's 23rd birthday. But more importantly, it was her wedding day. She had chosen to have the ceremony in the place where her life had truly begun, where a stranger's kindness had opened a door she thought had been forever closed. The guest list was small but meaningful. Caleb Shu's fellow carpenters who had become like brothers to him, some of Gabriella Hu's old friends, who had reconnected once she left her father's prison, the bakery staff who had witnessed their love story unfold, and Nathaniel, who stood ready to walk his daughter down the aisle. The aisle itself was wide enough for her wheelchair, which Molly had decorated with flowers and ribbons until it looked like something from a fairy tale. Gabriella wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to flow gracefully around her chair. And when she smiled at Caleb, waiting at the makeshift altar, she was radiant with a joy that seemed to light the room from within. Nathaniel had changed dramatically over the past year. He had stepped back from day-to-day operations at his company, promoting longtime employees and trusting others for the first time in decades he attended. Gabriella Yuku's physical therapy sessions, learning how to help with exercises and transfers. Most importantly, he had learned to sit with his daughter in silence, not needing to fix or manage anything, just being present. He had also formed an unexpected friendship with Caleb, finding in the younger man a wisdom that had nothing to do with stock portfolios or market strategies. They would spend evenings in Caleb's workshop. Nathaniel, learning to work with his hands for the first time in his life, discovering the meditation of creating something beautiful from raw materials. When Nathaniel walked beside Gabriella Chaw's wheelchair, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. His eyes were wet with tears he didn't try to hide. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he whispered. "Your mother would be so proud." Gabriella squeezed his hand. "She would be proud of you too, Dad, for finding your way back." Now, Gabriella once reached Caleb. Molly stood beside him as the flower girl, bouncing with excitement in her yellow dress that matched the sunflowers in her hair. The ceremony was simple, officiated by the bakery owner who had witnessed their first meeting and felt invested in their love story. Caleb's vows were straightforward and profound. Gabriella, you've taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone whose broken pieces fit with yours to create something whole. I promise to push your chair when you're tired, to carry you when needed, but most importantly, to always see you, not your disability, as the incredible woman who saved Molly, and me from a life half-lived. Gabriella Moto's vows brought tears to everyone present. Caleb, you and Molly didn't just accept my limitations. You showed me they don't define my possibilities. You've given me a family, a future, and a love I thought only existed in the books I read. I promise to be the mother. Molly deserves the wife you deserve, and to never let a day pass without choosing us over and over again. When they kissed, Molly cheered so loudly that everyone laughed, breaking the sacred moment into something even better. Pure, unbridled joy. The reception was held right there in the bakery, with Caleb's carpenter friends playing bluegrass music, and everyone dancing, including Gabriella, who spun her wheelchair with abandon, while Molly danced circles around her. Nathaniel surprised everyone by taking the microphone and speaking publicly for the first time about something other than business. I spent most of my life thinking success meant never showing weakness, never needing anyone. My daughter and her new family have taught me that real strength comes from vulnerability, while success from connection. Caleb. Thank you for seeing what I was too blind to see. Molly. Thank you for your innocent wisdom that cut through years of my foolishness. Gabriella. My darling daughter, thank you for having the courage to choose love despite my failures. Your mother always said I worked too much, and she was right. But it's never too late to learn. As the evening wound down, Gabriella Fontaine found herself outside briefly for fresh air. The stars were bright above the city, a rarity that felt like a blessing. She could hear the laughter from inside the bakery, the music still playing, glasses still clinking in toasts. Caleb joined her, bringing a piece of wedding cake. No one should eat cake alone, he said, echoing his first words to her. Gabriella laughed, pulling him down for a kiss. I'll never be alone again, will I? Caleb shook his head. Never. You've got me, Molly, your father. And he placed his hand gently on her stomach. Whoever this little one turns out to be. Gabriella Chow's eyes widened. She had planned to tell him tomorrow, but somehow he knew. How did you... Caleb grinned. Molly told me you've been feeling sick in the mornings. She's very observant. She's already planning to teach the baby everything about everything. Gabriella laughed through happy tears. The doctor said it might be complicated with my condition. Caleb knelt beside her chair, his face serious but unafraid. Then we'll face the complications together. That's what we do, right? Face things together. 6 months later, when Gabriella gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Joseph Nathaniel Fisher, Joseph after Eliza's father, and Nathaniel after the grandfather who had learned to love again. The hospital room was full of family. Nathaniel held his grandson with trembling hands while Molly explained to baby Joseph all the important things about being part of their family. You have to know, she said seriously to the infant, that we're a special family. We chose each other. That's the best kind. Caleb stood beside Gabriella's bed, their fingers intertwined, watching their blended family with wonder. The journey from that lonely birthday cake to this moment of abundance hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been challenges with Gabriella too. Pregnancy moments of doubt. Times when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. Nathaniel had occasionally slipped back into his workaholic tendencies. Caleb had struggled with fears of loss when Gabriella faced pregnancy complications, and merging two broken families into one whole unit had required patience therapy and endless grace. But they had learned that healing wasn't a destination, but a journey taken hand in hand. Wheel by wheel, step by step. They had discovered that love wasn't about perfection, but about showing up day after day, especially when it was hard. Gabriella looked around the room at her father cooing over his grandson at Molly, making the baby laugh with silly faces. At Caleb's eyes full of love and gratitude, and she thought about that wish she had made on her 22nd birthday. She had wished not to be alone. The universe, in its mysterious wisdom, had given her so much more. A love that saw past limitations, a family forged from loss and hope, and a future that proved that sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in the most unexpected soil. As baby Joseph wrapped his tiny fingers around Wata Gabriela's pinky, she whispered a prayer of gratitude for the broken road that had led her home. Outside the hospital window, the same stars that had witnessed her lonely birthdays now watched over a family that had chosen each other again and again and would continue choosing each other for all the birthdays to come.